And
welcome to Thrive in Sales, a sales training and thriving podcast. Hi, I'm Niraj. I'm an interactive sales trainer and one-to-one coach. I get results for small businesses and I deliver training to large corporates like Barclays, NatWest and Sainsbury's. I'm the author of 2 best-selling books.
And I'm Keith. I've sold technology services into investment banks throughout my whole sales career. And I sales-led one of the largest ever software outsourcing contracts, awarded over $1 billion. I'm a sales coach and also a visiting lecturer at Aston Business School.
And every week we're going to share proven strategies to help you generate more sales. Plus we'll bring an expert guest onto the show to help your knowledge, your strategies and your takeaways to help you thrive in sales. And this week's topic is closing deals. And our special guest is Drew Beattie. Drew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So what does Drew do? He helps businesses and professionals achieve higher performance, greater satisfaction and well-being. He has 8 years experience in training and development, 20 years experience in martial arts, 20 years in well-being and self-development. So he provides you with the tools you need to reach new levels of performance. I actually did martial arts for 4 years, Drew.
What style did you practice?
I was terrible. I was actually a white belt. I was just a kid. I watched The Karate Kid, I think, and I got carried away. But I'm really interested to learn how martial arts can really help people in well-being later on in the show. So closing deals. Every time I speak to customers, I used to go into offices, now it's over Zoom, of course, and I speak to them about the biggest challenges they're facing. They always say, we need to close more deals. We need to make more money and close more deals. Almost every customer I speak to. And when I spend time with their salespeople, I listen to their phone calls, I talk to them about their sales process. Closing deals is not a problem. The problem is people are not opening deals properly, they're not engaging with clients, and they're not really following sales process. Drew, talk to us about your business. How do you go about closing more deals? Is that something you think about, or do you think more about the engagement process? How does that work with you?
I try to think more about the process. When you were speaking there, I was thinking about one of the famous coaches from American football. One of his sayings was, the score will take care of itself. And I believe if you set up the process correctly and you're focused on delivering the best value and you're being the best you can be in that whole process, the deals will close by themselves, in the sense that if you're focused just on the outcome, the targets and so on, and not about your performance as a salesperson and what boxes you need to tick and maybe where you're not quite performing where you need to be, if you focus on the areas that you need to be performing at your best to close the deals, the score will take care of itself, your monthly target will take care of itself, and you're more likely to close more deals.
No, I totally agree. It does scare me the number of times people try and sell to me on the first phone call, and they do the old trial close. And, I know every close because I've trained them all. I know every trick in the book. And when people start doing that in the first phone call, it worries me when they haven't followed the process correctly. Keith, what are your experiences in closing deals? Are you a big fan of the close, or do you prefer the earlier setup first? What's your process like?
So it is really interesting, and I agree wholeheartedly with what Drew was talking about just then. It's about matching your sales cycle, your selling cycle with the customer's buying cycle. So if you try selling too early and you get that, as you just said, trial close, which is so 1980s, in constant, we're all more sophisticated, sales is more nuanced, everything is more nuanced these days, buyers are more sophisticated. We have to come at this from a slightly different angle. And what I try to do, and this may be counterintuitive, but I try to get no early, because if it's not going to work out, I don't want to waste my time on a pursuit which I'm never going to win. And there's a real art in identifying what you're not going to win early on, and therefore, not wasting any of the customer's time either. And then obviously spending your time on more pursuits that you do stand a chance of winning is just a much more productive and less stressful use of your time. So getting your selling and buying cycles aligned is really where it's at.
No, I think that's fantastic. Matching the selling cycle, your selling cycle, with the customer's buying cycle is brilliant. One thing that actually happened 2 days ago on LinkedIn, somebody contacted me through Messenger and said, "What's the exact phrase you use when closing?" I thought that was a very interesting question to ask, because what a lot of people do, and mistakenly do, is they call somebody up and go, "Are you ready to go ahead?" Or even worse, they send them an email and say, "Are you ready to go ahead?" And I don't think that's quite right. I believe before you close a deal, it's very important to speak to the client, to remind them of their needs, remind them of the value and benefits you offer, ask them, has anything changed? Because sometimes things have changed. And I often say, "So are we ready to go ahead?" That's much better than saying, "Can I send you an order form across?" Or, the usual cliche terminology. What kind of terminology do you use, Drew, whenever you're about to close a deal with a client?
Like you say, I suppose, are you ready to go ahead, or is there anything else I need to know about? Or if we were to work together, what area would you be most interested in working in first? So presumptive questions, perhaps, to help encourage them that they're moving forward in the process.
That's a brilliant question. If you work together, what area would you be interested in working in first?
Or what are you most excited about getting your teeth into first in the product or service that you're offering? So it gets them thinking about using the product or service, not about committing maybe to the sale. So they're already feeling like they've taken part, and they're already start to enjoy the benefits, rather than maybe they're still stuck in that decision making. You starting to encourage them to move past that. One of the people, I'm not a sales expert by any means, but I went on a training course with a sales guy, and he used to talk about waving a magic wand, and he'd say to clients, "So a year's time, wave a magic wand. In a year's time, tell me what the outcome is of us working together, this, that, and the other." And it really helped people get into the mind's eye of where they're going to be after this whole process, this, as I say, product or service. And they're more likely to kind of engage with those benefits, as I say, rather than looking maybe to stall or look for distraction questions to move away from the outcome.
That's so good. Thank you for sharing that. I use exactly the same phrase, except I don't use the word magic wand, but I use that because a lot of customers will get training, but they're not quite sure what their outcome is meant to be, except more money, which is so vague. And I always say, well, should it be more meetings the clients, your staff have booked with customers? Should it be an increased number of phone calls? Should it be more confidence with staff? There's so many different outcomes and variables. I always think it's very important to say to clients, what are you hoping to achieve out of this? Which I'm surprised very few people ask their customers, but they should do. Keith, is there anything else you wanted to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, first of all, I do use that question, waving a magic wand, if you could wave a magic wand, but I don't use it in terms of a close. I use it in terms of discovery. Let's just retrench to a blank sheet of paper. Just what is it you're going after here? That's a really insightful question to ask, and often when you ask the question, it leads to a fairly long degree of silence. If you've asked it in the right way, you will cause the other person to really think and reflect about, gee, what is it I am going after? And that silence is very, very uncomfortable to most people. Of course, to salespeople, that properly trained salespeople, they'll learn to embrace and hold that silence, knowing that whatever happens next is going to be really, really interesting. So I do use that. But I ask, because the sale, we're not there really the sale is just the part of a new journey, a more productive journey. So let's not get too hung up on the process of closings. In the 1980s, they used to talk about 75 different ways to close, and closing should be a natural conclusion of a highly productive and valuable conversation that you've had. And it's all, we make a big deal about, would you like to sign now? The answer is almost certain.
Yeah.
No thanks, I want to think about it, or whatever.
Threat detection, isn't it?
Exactly right. How often do you go into we'll call it a car showroom? They're possibly one of the worst, and maybe a retail store selling televisions, and will come and they'll ask you a closed question: can I help you? The answer is almost certainly no, I'm just browsing. So you need to ask a much more sophisticated question than that to make any further progress.
No, 100%. Now, I know that closing deals creates a lot of tension, and even working in sales, whether you're a salesperson or a business owner, or whether even if you work in IT or marketing or HR, and you have to do business, when it does get to that very end process, it can get very stressful for a lot of people. It's one of the reasons we discuss well-being in this podcast. So, Drew, what are the common misconceptions people have about wellness practices in your view?
My view is that a lot of people see it as very fluffy and without much serious science behind it. And I get that point because I wrote an article on LinkedIn a while back, and it was about why you should engage in wellness and well-being practices. And one of the points I raised on that article was you meet people and they follow certain practice, and they're almost as like a pseudo-religious form of zealotness about it, and that puts a lot of people off because there's this, as I say, there's this assumption that certain people do wellness, and a lot of people think that's not for me. There's certain aspects of it, whereas the truth of the matter is, it's all, what I deal with is based on science. We know a lot about what really harms people, what we can do to benefit ourselves, what are the aspects we need to be taking care of to look after ourselves. And some of these are very basic things, such as things to do with the body. One of the stats I like to talk about is that we lose, the average person lose 8 to 10 centimeters of flexibility off their lower back over a lifetime. If you're sitting down for a job and you've got back pain, the pattern is it's going to get worse and it's not going to get better. Chronic pain pain in the back affects around 80% of people. Depression and lower back pain is very strongly correlated. So these aren't fluffy aspects at all. It's physiological things and things that we can take an active part in looking to alleviate, with some simple.
So how can we alleviate them? I know people are at home more now at the moment, especially, and majority of people now are kind of joking how uncomfortably tight their clothes are becoming because we're exercising less, we're sitting in these seats all day long. So how do you overcome this battle people are going to eventually have with back pain and depression?
Well, first of all, we're not supposed to sit for too long. No matter how well designed a chair, you can't sit in that chair for hour on hour working away. You have to stand up it's recommended every half an hour. You should at least stand up and reassess your posture and stand up nice and straight and maybe move around a bit and then sit down. Problem is, if you're working in office, you've got a target. I mean, we're talking about sales. Sales is a target-led industry. Mostly, you've got this thing hanging over you. You've got to make these targets by the end of the month. So you're calling. If you're sat there all the time, your spine, if you look around the office, we can't really do it at the moment, but if you imagine you're in the office, you look around, people are sat down for a long time. This is the shape of their spine. It all just kind of collapses in. What we need to do is do the counter effect of that. So when you're sat with this C-shaped spine, your back broadens and your chest hollows out, and you're kind of, especially if you're on a laptop, you're all kind of internally rotated. What you need to do is the opposite. You need to broaden your chest and narrow your back, and that takes some engagement of the shoulders. There you go, Niraj. What happens if you do that? I mean, I'm not doing it at the moment as well, but absolutely, you broaden the chest, broaden the chest, narrow the back. Your heart and your lungs have got more room. Your stomach and your organs got more room to do things, and you can stand up nice and straight. Now, standing up straight is beneficial to the spine. The organs function better. I mean, that's one of the very simple things that you can do. Stand up every 25 minutes. Have you ever heard of a Pomodoro timer? It's
yes, of course.
25 minutes. So you can work clearly on what you're doing for 25 minutes. That alarm goes off. Give yourself 5 minutes. Now, if you've got an hour to achieve something, you've got some work to do in an hour, you could sit there for an hour and grind it out, or you can do 2 25-minute sessions with 2 5-minute breaks. And if you get the same result, which one would you choose?
That's fantastic. So during those 5-minute breaks, just get up, walk around, don't sit down, just move your body around. Yes.
I'm definitely going to be using that. I like that. It's too easy. You become, particularly if you're at home, there's no one else around, no distractions. Sometimes you can be looking down at your desk and it's 9:05 or whatever. As you look up again, it's 11:30. You've been sat in that, as you say, that C position for 2.5 hours, and no wonder you feel dreadful, both mentally and physically, when you get up. So those 25-minute, what I would call spurts almost, of activity and get up. I love that. I love that. Something else.
It can help you break down a big task as well. You know, you've got a big task that you need to do. It's like, oh, you don't want to do it. You kind of procrastinating a little bit about it. Hey, I can do 25 minutes, can't I? I can just jump on and crack on for 25 minutes. And what you find is after 10, 15 minutes of doing the task, you're engaged now and you're into it. You've started to, starting to do it. You've done a few calls, whatever the task is you've got to do, you've breaking it down, you've got started. So it works at both ends. Some people have trouble getting started on the task, and some people will just work for hours and hours and hours without giving themselves some breaks. So I think that Pomodoro technique is brilliant on both sides of the distribution, if you like.
That's brilliant. So what other kind of things people can add to the routine to have a positive effect on their well-being on a daily basis, Drew?
There's 3 core ones that I really focus on. That's mobility, moving the body around, moving the joints through the full range of motion, posture and stability, which we looked at, and relaxation. So, if we're working, like we're saying, for an extended period of time and we're not moving our joints through the full range, they can start to break down on us. We can start to have some wear and tear issues. As we get older, that becomes more and more of an issue. So we have to take care of ourselves. We have to look at ourselves and break down the body, because most people don't, a lot of us are outward focusing, we don't focus on ourselves so much. So, if you break down the body, we've got the big structure up here, we've got the neck, we've got the shoulders, we've got the hips. If you're very short on time, just some simple mobility for those structures. If you've got more time, you can break it down. You can go into the hands, you can go into the elbows, the wrists, and so on and so forth. With relaxation, the relaxation response is quite simple to understand. Well, it all comes down to our breathing patterns. And so what I teach my clients is to regulate their breath. It's an idea from Qigong. If we are breathing shallowly and very quickly, this brings our level up and we start to get agitated. We can't focus and so on and so forth. And this is very common in life now with social media, and especially more with the situation we're in at the moment. Simply to relax, all we need to do is breathe in slowly, in and out, but more importantly on the out breath. If that's 5 or 6 seconds in length and you do it for a length of time, you will become relaxed. So there's a system within the body, not to bore you with too much science, but it's called the autonomic nervous system, and it has 2 branches. One is getting us ramped up for activity. Problem is, most people live in this area. It's called the sympathetic nervous system. The other system is when we're relaxed. We have no threats. We're talking about selling or closing a sale. If you activate the sympathetic response in someone, threat detection, cortisol, stress hormone, and all these sorts of things. And this happens to ourselves as well. So if we can take the time out of our day, 5-10 minutes, to refine this relaxation process, it's going to bring our baseline down. It's going to allow us to manage our stress, manage to keep these threat detection outbursts that we all have under control, keep them under, keep them a little bit suppressed, if you like. And when we're in this state, our body functions better. We can handle immunity. Our immune system works better. We're able to focus as well. We're not worried about the target at the end of the month. Sorry, go on.
No, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. One thing I'm curious about, because for people like myself and Keith, what's a nice way of putting this? We're at a certain age where we understand this. We get what you're saying.
What do you mean, 75?
It's a good way. It's a very fair way of putting it. Very delicate way of putting it. But when I walk into sales offices, or I speak to people on Zoom in sales, they're very young. And when you're young, you do think you're indestructible. You do sleep a lot less. You drink far too many Red Bulls. You don't sleep much at night. And you don't really think about your health much because it's not affecting you there and then. How can we better educate younger people, especially in sales, who don't have good body posture, who don't think about their health, who will not think twice about having 3 or 4 Red Bulls in a row? What advice do you have to them, Drew?
I would say treat yourself as you would treat a friend. Because like you say, we're less likely to take medicine for ourselves. We're less likely to follow the rules of certain things where a close family friend or colleague, we see them doing the same sort of thing, would probably object to it more likely. You have to give yourself a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. As I say, you might have a certain amount of time to get a certain amount of work done, but if you're working straight through for 3 hours, are you going to be at your optimum? Probably not. So I mean, one stat that really jumped out for me, which I didn't think about until I learned it, was world champion chess players consume the same, roughly the same amount of calories as a marathon runner. And that's just through cognitive focus, that exactly. So if you work in a job where you have to think a lot, very intently, I mean, you don't think about it, do you? You think, oh, why am I exhausted? Well, you're burning up calories like nobody's business, like a marathon runner. And if you're doing that in a bad posture, even worse. And if you're strung out on Red Bull, dehydrated as well. And like we're saying, if you're consuming a lot of caffeine, you're in that sympathetic nervous system, that ramped up system. That's just consuming your resources like mad, like wildfire. You're just burning them up. And like you say, when you're 21, it's great, perfect. You can deal with it, but as you get older, you can't. And we all think we're going to live forever, but unfortunately, I mean, as I say, when I started training in martial arts, I was 20 years old and I was all about punching and kicking. But as I say, I'm 41 now. When I passed into my 30s, the rebalance started to shift and I got more and more interested in the well-being part, because I started to realize, I need to look after myself, because there's only me, I can't clone myself into another one. Technology's not there yet. So bear in mind that, yeah, you're burning up calories, working hard, consuming all that caffeine. It's going to have an effect on you, and give yourself a break. Thankfully, I live by the river. If I don't have that walk by the river each day, I can really feel it, so give yourself a break, get out, walk around, and what works best for you. What you can't do is tell people exactly how to get the best, relaxation out of them. What relaxes people? Ask yourself the question. When I feel great and relaxed, what am I doing? Because it's different for different people. I like to walk by the river. I need to be in nature at least a little bit of the time each day, just to de-stress and moving. And, when you go for a walk, you come up with these good ideas. If you're stuck in the flat like we've been for the last 2-3 months, not so much. So a bit of a winding answer to your question, but I hope I covered some of them.
No, that was
brilliant. Go ahead, Keith.
No, it was great. I wish I'd have had that advice when I started out in the telesales business, which was a bit of a boiler room. That translates at the time, where you would have 25, 30 people, in a row. It was noisy. It was it's like being on a building site. It really was. There were crescendo of voices going on. It's very hard to concentrate. And if you got up to leave your desk, even to use the bathroom, your sales manager would have really frowned on it, because they thought it was being more productive to keep you there hour after hour. How little we knew, maybe at the time, or cared, for salespeople was should be highly trained athletes in their own rights. So that I love that. Now the 25 minutes thing, I will have to get some discipline to do that. But it sounds like even take a break, even if it's for 25, 30 seconds. Get up, stretch the back, move around a little bit, gets the blood flowing, get some more oxygen in the body, sit back down, go again. I think even I could really do it, first of all, and I could really benefit from just being able to give those extra spurts of energy. That was great advice.
Absolutely. Because my first job, as I said to you previously, Keith, was working for a double glazing telecan office. So yeah, I could, and it's a 3-hour shift, but it was exhausting, it took forever. And if you get a 5-minute break, I was a smoker at the time, I was a teenager. So, like we're saying, you've been working hard for an hour and a half, you jump out and have a cigarette and you're back on. It's like, that's not going to help, is it? But, I was young, didn't know. What can you do?
I'm curious, you spent 20 years doing martial arts, okay? What effect does martial arts have on your well-being and mental health?
One of the aspects of well-being the NHS talk about is lifelong learning. If you're always learning and you're always moving forward with your self-knowledge, you're you're able to manage your emotions better, because there's nothing worse than being static. 10 years could go by and you haven't improved in any area. Your life's exactly the same. You look back over those 10 years and it's just, what's happened? There's no journey, no ups and downs almost. It's just been a complete flat line. So when you're constantly learning, you feel yourself improving and learning new things. You look back and you say, oh yeah, what have I done the last 10 years? I've learned this, I've learned this, I've learned this. It's actually a way of slowing down time, which we're all keen to do as we get a bit older, I'm sure, because it just goes past so quickly. Martial arts is, for me, it's the king of self-development. Nothing gives you more benefits. It's physical, it's psychological. You feel like you're competent in dealing in different situations, not just in conflict, but when you're in a situation where the stress really jumps out at you, and the time there with the London Bridge knife attack a couple of years ago, I was in Bank, just across the river. When it all kind of kicked off, I was the other side of the river, thankfully not too close to it. But as soon as we heard about that, I basically, all other options just fell out of my mind, and it was just like, oh, we need to get there, basically. If I had never trained martial arts and done all that well-being, would I have done the same? I'm not sure. And it wasn't like I had someone in front of me trying to challenge me. I was across the other side of the river, but I instantly thought to myself, okay, that's where we need to go. We're just going. Martial arts is great because, as I say, it's physical as well. It keeps your body young. There's kind of two sides of it with the well-being part, like we were saying before. So it helps you manage yourself. It keeps your ego in check too. I remember when I first moved to London, I thought I was a certain level, if you like, and I went and tried MMA out because I hadn't grappled at that time. So I'm a black belt, blah blah blah. Boom, taken down, smushed. So that was a check, an ego check, and from there I've learned to grapple. I've learned new elements, and I've kind of built myself in this whole new path as well. So I think that the positive benefits of martial arts are literally endless. Yeah. And it's not about just fighting, it's about it's self-development, physical. So it's a whole being, not to get too fluffy on you guys.
Well, it's about not fighting.
Yeah. Well. I haven't had a street fight since I was a teenager, before I started training. So, it's and that was me getting a shellacking rather than doing the shellacking, I must add.
That's good. Well, so such an important part of sales training is not just what we talk about, what we learn. It's the takeaways as well. And it's so important that every time we learn stuff, we put stuff into action. So at the end of each episode, Drew, Keith and I kind of share takeaways with our guests we're going to implement for next week. So in terms of the sales, think about the sales process. Match your selling cycle with the customer's buying cycle. What are you most excited about getting your teeth into first? I really like that. Every 25 to 30 minutes in terms of well-being, stand up and move around for 5 minutes. Think about mobility, think about posture and stability, think about relaxation. If you're young and you think you're absolutely the strongest person in the world and you have to worry about anything for the next 15 to 20 years, just treat yourself like you would a friend and take good care of your health and make sure you get into nature. Because nature is wonderful, even if it's just the weekends. People like us, we're quite lucky to live near nature and go for walks. But for younger people in the city, try to get away from the city the weekends. It's so wonderful. And martial arts, lifelong learning, well-being, that is just incredible. Keith, I'm sure I missed a few things out there. I was jotting down so many notes from Drew. What else do you want to add there?
Yeah, I've got lots here as well. I really... liked is probably the wrong word, but I really took note of the connection you made between depression and lower back pain, which I'm going to wrap up in any kind of pain at all. I'm familiar with that phrase, there's no nobility in pain, but your body is trying to tell you something. So I was really impressed upon that, and therefore just be conscious and take care of yourself. I loved the Pomodoro timer that you mentioned, and that idea of working in spurts. All of a sudden, your day becomes a lot more focused, a lot clearer when you're able to continue it in spurts like that, knowing that you've got a scheduled break every 25 minutes or so. That really resonated with me. Thank you for that. But also like the idea that we're actually following the science here. So all of a sudden we've almost transmogrified well beyond just waffly stuff. we're actually into scientific evidence, which I'm a big fan of. So it has been really, really insightful.
That's been incredible. Thank you so much. So people listen to this show, if they want to learn more about well-being, what's the best way to get in touch with you, Drew?
Probably best to connect with me on LinkedIn. My website's being redesigned at the moment. But as I said earlier, I published an article about well-being 18 months or so. I've republished it today in line with this the podcast. So that's on my LinkedIn profile. So I've also got some short 5-minute videos. One's on mobility, one's on posture, and one's on relaxation, as I spoke about. So if you search Drew High Performance on YouTube, you'll find my channel and you'll find those videos, and also Drew Beattie on LinkedIn.
Thanks. And if they want to,
Drew as in DRUID High Performance on YouTube, yeah?
That's the one, yeah, that's the one.
Fantastic. Well, Drew, thank you so much for your time. Keith and I are both incredibly grateful. And if you have any questions or points you want to raise in the future shows, or you want to hire Keith and Niraj for sales training, then please contact us, hello@thriveinsales.com. We'd love to hear from you. And also don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now, Keith, go ahead.
This episode is brought to you by Monkey Pants Productions. They're a podcast production company helping businesses enter the world of podcasting through bespoke workshops, professional standard recordings, and for more information, contact pete@monkeypantsproductions.co.uk.
Fantastic. Now, before we go, Keith and I are both massive fans of the TV show Frasier. So until next week, thank you for joining us. And we're both wishing you good sales, mental health. One day we'll get that in sync. We will, I promise you. Until next week, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
Thanks.